Hello, listeners. We are your co-hosts, Janine Bailey and Marie Quigley, for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart, and soul. Hello and welcome, listeners, to the next episode of the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. And I am here today, not with my wonderful partner, Marie. Instead, I'm here with my wonderful colleague, friend, Sunni Smith. Sunni, I'm so delighted that you are with me on this podcast because, as I mentioned earlier, it's been some time that I've been aiming to get you on. So I'm so pleased that you're here. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a great pleasure. And so I've known Sunni now, I think, for a number of years. We met initially through Damien Goldvarg's supervision course. So I was supporting Damien on that course, and that's how we got to connect. And through that, of course, we've partnered together. We have seen each other through various different networks, and of course, from time to time, we connect one-to-one. So, and although we haven't met each other in person as yet, I hope that we will one day, Sunni. I hope that we will.
It feels like it already. When you just mentioned that, I realized that was true.
Yeah.
I attended Converge, the ICF conference, and I saw some people for the first time in the flesh. It was really interesting.
It is, isn't it? And I think COVID really gave us that opportunity to connect and meet with so many people across the globe. It was, for me, it was a wonderful time of making some wonderful connections. And, but yes, now that we can travel, I hope that we can meet at last face to face.
Absolutely.
So, Sunni, over to you to introduce yourself. I'd love the listeners to hear your incredible experience.
Well, one of the things we were talking about, I think, before we started the podcast was the things that life affords you and brings to you is never kind of what you always or expect. And I feel like my journey has not been particularly linear, but very off on tributaries and circles or things but it all comes together, I think, eventually. As you mature and develop, it makes sense. It starts to have continuity and starts to have purpose, even more purpose and direction. So I am first generation here in the U.S. I have family who is Caribbean from Jamaica. So I was brought up in a household that was very open, and we had people at our dinner table from all different countries all the time. So I thought having an accent was normal. My father had an accent, other people had different accents. And it was quite a while before I realized that there was, something that was a majority kind of speech pattern, I guess is what I'm saying. And that was good. I think my parents also were very involved in the civil rights movement. So I got a good foundation in that. Grew up on the East Coast in New York. And we even moved into an all-white neighborhood on Long Island for a while and experienced a lot of hostility. Rocks being thrown through our windows was the John Birch kind of area. And then going to college, I also had a personal experience with having a disability, and I studied psychology, got a master's degree in rehabilitation, and then went on to do consulting work. And it was there that someone said to me, I think you should go to law school. And I said, who, me? No, that's not in the cards. But again, that started to be like a seed that grew and grew. And I eventually went to law school. And, but a lot of what I did was still in purpose in terms of supporting and helping other people who were less fortunate than I, even though my family was not wealthy or rich or anything. uh, of that nature, but it was instilled in me to always reach back and help others. Um, and when I actually got a fellowship and came out to the West Coast, I ran into an attorney who was a coach. I said, I don't understand what you do. And she explained, and I said, gee, that feels really familiar. I've been doing that all my life, and that's what led me to coaching. As a matter of fact, you probably don't know, but I was in Johnny Goldpart's very first coaching class that he ever taught.
Really? No, I did not know.
So that's some history. And again, here we're full circle. He introduced me to coaching supervision. Absolutely loved it. It took my coaching to a whole new level. And you're sometimes when you study and you're in a profession, do things over and over and over again. You sort of say, is this all there is? Well, supervision taught me, no, that's not all there is, a one-on-one coaching situation. And here we go, full circle. This year, I contributed to the book, The Practice of Coaching Supervision Groups, and which is akin but different than one-on-one supervision. Even just like coaching teams is different than coaching groups of leaders who are not coaches. So you have all these different permeations of coaching and how it can really impact people and organizations and systems and have this kind of ripple effect. I even worked with a lot of nonprofits and NGOs. I have a particular program I developed called TACT, TACT, which stands for Technical Assistance and Coach Training, where I parallel technical training for leaders in NGOs and nonprofits with coaching concepts. And to tell you the truth, the coaching is the glue that makes the technical stuff stick. So we may present a segment on grant writing and proposal writing, and then also talk about, from a coaching concept, what these terms mean and how to express what the nonprofit or the NGO does in a community impact in a different way than even funders look at it. So, or budgeting and your attitudes towards money and how that influences decision making, on a management and leadership level. So,
Wow, Sunny, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
that was a nutshell, I guess.
It,
Big nutshell.
yeah, it was really um, wonderful to hear what you have shared about your journey. And we did talk about that earlier before we started the podcast about the journey and coming full circle, coming back home, potentially enriched, enhanced, wiser. And as you were sharing about your journey, what I really appreciated was, as you say, the depth of coaching, what doors coaching can open, what different pathways, fields that we can go into as a coach. And hearing also your background, given your legal background and working with technical experts and leaders, again, hearing how, there's all sorts of different combinations of how we can support leaders to step into their brilliance even more, to enhance what they do even more, with that relational side. So yes, thank you for sharing all of that, Sunny. And I'm just curious, we said we'd just have an emergent conversation. We would see what comes up. So as I reflect that back to you, I'm wondering what's popping up for you right now.
Oh, probably a number of different things. You touched on the artistic side. I had the opportunity to work and become certified in what's called ABLE, an arts-based experiential learning. When I was coming up, my mother and her friends thought I would end up being in the arts because I was in dance and theater. And it's still a very very deep and attractive part of me, that kind of expression. And I love film and I love watching film, and I'm getting more into writing and things like that. But when I heard that there was actual some data, which I know one of our colleagues says everything is data, which is true, but we're talking about the actual um, research and experimentation with the arts and leadership and how executives can become extremely more innovative when they have pull in experiential, meaning, really active interaction when in coaching with the arts. So I thought this was great. I mean, I just also like to deconstruct the normal patterns, but um, I've used that theory and approach quite a bit with my coaching groups, especially whether it's coaching a group of attorneys, or I actually used it doing a presentation with a coaching school in China.
Mm.
And even though it's my first experience with that deep translation, was I hear in one ear someone speaking Chinese and then it being translated to me, and I'm, processing all of this at the same time. But I did an sort of experiential activity with 200 people, Chinese coaches, not in live, but we're talking through Zoom, a conference. But it was great. I didn't know whether it would really work or whether it would land in a way that was inspirational for them, but it was. They had to draw a figure just on a piece of paper. So, I mean, it wasn't anything that complicated. And you don't have to be an artist to do this. But what it reveals is your approach and your strategy and decision making about how you will approach something you have not seen before, that is not explained to you, and how you go about discovering a method. It was amazing how many people really did really well. When I say well with the drawing, the purpose is to duplicate like a Xerox copy of what they see, never seen before. And it worked out really well. I think it revealed to people the differences and that they don't have to be subject matter experts in drawing to do something that's meaningful.
So, wow, that is incredible. 200 people over Zoom to facilitate that. Incredible.
Right, over 3,000 miles away. Yes.
You've what I've understood, Sunny, is you've had incredible an incredible variety of different types of coaching roles, supervision roles, and used various different creative ways to support the individuals, the teams, the groups. I read earlier about also that bringing in art with a leadership team that you worked with. And I felt that was a really powerful way to support the leadership team. Would you be happy to share what that was like? What kind of
Sure. Yeah. It was great. I think bridging from the example that I just gave to you about the Chinese coaches, this was a group, it was a legal department at a company, um, that's a Fortune 250 company. So there was about 30 people, everybody from risk management to, employment attorneys, some of them non-attorneys. And again, this was over Zoom. So I was brought into a retreat on screen. Um, and the thing that was interesting about this, we were talking about collaboration versus co-creation. And of course, the concept of co-creation was a little different than what people had heard before. And I was working with them to distinguish the elements of each. And we did this drawing exercise the same way. And one of the attorneys had had his 360. And at the end, I said, "What did this tell you? What was your experience like?" And he said, "To be honest with you, He said, I didn't follow the instructions. I'm going to admit that. He said, and after I looked back and I saw everybody else doing it, the instructions, and they did it the way you were supposed to do it, and I changed it at the end. He said, I remember reading in my 360 that people said I micromanage. And he said, it suddenly hit me that maybe I do, that I have to have it my way. And this was a perfect example. It didn't impact anyone but me. He said, but I changed the directions because I wanted it my way. And he said that was quite an eye opener. So you can see how somebody who's in charge of in many people in an employment situation can really get some insight that even a typical 360-degree assessment did not give him. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Thank you. I had Batman, my cat, in the background, so I was aiming to not bring him into our podcast, but he somehow has snuck in as I'm mentioning him. And what I was saying was that is incredible, isn't it? That something that seems like it wouldn't be so powerful was in
Or even relevant. Yes.
yeah, creating a powerful insight for him where he becomes a choice as to whether to continue to go down that route or not of micromanaging.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's very interesting. I think about just the different people that I have had the fortunate power or the opportunity to impact. And I thought about another attorney. I was in a group where I facilitated individuals going through a Holocaust museum. And we had parents of students from a particular school. One was an attorney that was there. And he was talking about how he has a teenager that he can get no real conversation with, and we were talking and discussing ways to actually reach people to be more open to that. So we did a little role play in front of the audience. And I said, okay, I'm going to be you and you have to be your daughter. So he said, I pick her up from school. I go, how was school? Fine. Is everything, what did you do? Nothing. It was like he couldn't get conversation. And I tried something new. And I said, well, what, what courses did you have today? He's history. Like, I don't know. And I said, as the father, if you were the teacher, how would you teach that class? And he looked at me even like, you know, young people don't ever think that parents or adults bestow to them the wisdom of what should be done. So he said, well, I would have taught it outside. I said, that's a great idea. And how would you get the class to all go outside? And suddenly there was a conversation happening because the dynamics shifted. It was not father, daughter, but it was people to people and opened up to just about anything.
Yeah.
What her idea of what should have been taught and the way it should be taught had legitimacy, and it wasn't you go to school to listen to the teacher because the teacher knows it all. That's one of the things I teach part-time is being able to say to students, I really don't know. I think that's something that we could discover or find out because it's a really good point. But I don't know. And we don't know everything. We never will know everything. And I use kind of some of your viewers would know the Johari window, things the things you don't know. We go, but I'm down there at the fourth window. I said, you want to access things you don't know.
Yeah.
But they're there. They're in our collective consciousness as a people, as human beings. And again, the human being, we're not human doers, but we spend more time on the doing than the being, which is one of the principles. And I think one of the pillars of coaches and coaching is to learn how to be,
Yeah.
rather than just do. You are not all of what you do. There's a part of you that is just a being. It's
Mm,
where our humility lies.
mm. It really does, doesn't it? And I think more than ever, we are being called to come back to our being
Mhm.
versus doing. Uh, the doing is potentially creating what the challenges that are happening today, the incredible challenges on so many levels, environmental, mental, resources, biodiversity loss, etc.
Exactly.
The doing is potentially ramping those challenges up. Whereas I believe, and I know so many do, that if we can come back to being,
Mm.
there's less demand on our beautiful planet.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that article, you know, um, I was talking to someone and it always comes up for me because I had the fortunate opportunity to train with someone who passed away, unfortunately, but taught me the elements of trust, transparency, relationship building, understanding, shared success, and then telling the truth, the TRUST.
Mm.
And she said, I remember doing one of it was a year-long course. She said, what does it mean to understand someone? And everyone was using understand to define understanding, using the word to define itself. And she stopped everyone and said, it's really not that difficult. To understand means to stand under someone else's reality. And this goes to, as you pointed out, the conflicts, the disagreements, the polarization that is occurring all over the world globally. And it struck me so much that I developed an exercise around understanding when I work with groups often. And I bring in an umbrella. And when someone has a truth that they would like to express, they take the umbrella and stand up and share their truth. Anyone in the group who can understand that person or stand under their reality comes and stands with them under that. It doesn't mean you have to adopt that truth. It doesn't mean you have to change what you believe or what your values are. It just means you're open enough to stand under that person's reality. Go back to your seat, maintain your own reality. But we need more of that understanding
Yeah.
in our conversations, in our interactions, politically, socially, healthcare wise. We
Mm.
need it desperately in education. Can we stand under someone else's reality?
Yeah.
I'm always just moved by experiential. It grounds people in a way that just narratively or talking about something doesn't, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
go on like this.
Yeah. I really appreciate you bringing in that beautiful example of how people get to speak their truth, but to somatically cement that, bring that learning in even more. What's the word I'm looking for, Sunny? Make it even more powerful, that understanding.
Mhm.
What a
It really makes it live, come alive
Mm.
in a way that just talking about it does not.
Mm.
And you can see it. I'm a very visual person. Um, so there are lots of different small and, people refer to coaching as woo woo, I don't really want to, get into all of that. And I think that we separate ourselves from our being. And I mean, because you talked about somatics. And when I learned how much my body is integrated and talks to me constantly, you know, we have more than one brain here, intellectual. There's a heart brain and there's this a gut brain. That's why people came up with the expression, go with your gut. Because there's wisdom and knowledge in your gut. You know, your body is constantly telling you this is not comfortable, this is not right, this we need something else. You know, I do an exercise, this sort of grounding exercise with yawning. And people really think that yawning means you're bored, and that's not necessarily so. And taking in that extra oxygen really increases oxytocin, the good hormone, brain hormone, and serotonin. It really makes you feel focused. And if you think about it, you have a cat. Your pets yawn. You've seen a cat yawn. Even in utero, babies yawn inside, before they're born. So this is a very natural occurrence, and it doesn't necessarily mean people are sleepy. And when you do that combined with like a power pose or something, it can put you mentally in a very different state of readiness and of focus and attention.
Mm. Yes, thank you for sharing that. It's I have heard that before and I'd completely forgotten about it. So thank you for bringing it back in. It was interesting as well when you talked about focus. Your camera was zooming in and out as
Oh, see, yeah. We learned how to teach it to do that. I still think, I am definitely I can say I support AI in degrees, but the human being contact, I don't think they'll be ever able to duplicate that or mimic it at all. There's still that personal human component that's irreplaceable.
Yes, it's that part of us that picks up energy and physiology and intuition and all those sorts of things that AI, as far as I know, cannot do yet. But yes, it's becoming increasingly sophisticated. But yeah,
But I don't think it will ever really mimic that at all.
and certainly the real heart and soul
Mhm.
of of being with another human being. So I thought you were going to say something then,
I
Sunny.
was getting ready to say, I'm not sure I think the only thing that would make me believe is when a bot started to cry. Then I'd say, okay, maybe. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, no. Let's hope not. And so, Sunny, I know when we got together before the podcast, we were talking about the book that you contributed to in relation to group supervision. And there was a saying that came up about what was it? Hopefully you remember it. The meeting of the minds, I think you
Yes.
shared. So I'm wondering as we start to wrap up our conversation today, maybe there is something with that meeting of the minds that you shared earlier that you'd like to share now with our audience.
Well, the thing again, that came from a very legal-based concept, but in coaching, we have the meeting of the minds and the joining of the hearts. So we go a step further than just the intellectual agreement. I think there's more to it than that. And in our chapter, Co-Creating Coherence, took us a while to come up with that title. We played with a lot of it, but the co-creation is so important. And that involvement, connection goes beyond just what is agreed to. It is the sensing and the awareness and the inclusion that makes that meeting of the minds, that agreement, so powerful. It is what allows us to check that agreement to make sure that we're still on the same page. It is that coherence that allows us to really mutually celebrate reaching an objective and a goal. So again, those things that we have in society have purpose and truth. And I think coaching just takes it all to another level, another depth of understanding and impact. It helps our intention actually come together with purpose and then fulfillment, I think.
Mm. Yeah. I believe that too, Sunny. And we know coaching is like no other, a coaching conversation is like no other conversation. And I would say supervision is another
Yes.
level again.
And
It's
who knows, there may be a third level we don't know about yet, but that's where innovation exists.
mm, exactly. And the supervision profession of coaches is still in its infancy. So there's certainly a lot more development to come. And I just thank you, Sunny, and everybody involved in the book. I have got it. Haven't
It's
started to read it yet. I have forgotten the title.
the practice of coaching supervision groups.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on a circles model, which I really like because again, there's no beginning, no end, just continues. Um, and there are components inside of it, and then outside there are applications at the end.
Mm,
Applications to teams, applications to leaders, application to just general groups that are not necessarily coaching groups. And so the book has a great deal of very practical things to offer, insights for both individuals wanting to become supervisors and those who want to just participate and be supervisees. It looks at it from both angles. So that's what's really good about it. Ask a lot of questions, which is what coaching is
mm.
about questioning and discovery.
Yes, absolutely. And I thought my book was somewhere around me, but
I have a copy if you want me to hold. I
yeah,
keep it on my desk, but this is what it looks like. I love this graphic in here because it's so, it moves for me.
yeah.
And it has a lot of color and movement and about the ripple effect of coaching and supervision, how it impacts all of us.
It's a beautiful metaphor, that image,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in terms of coaching, in terms of supervision, and I am really looking forward to diving into it as most of my supervision work is with groups versus one to one. Although I'm fortunate to have a few of those clients, but the group I do love group supervision. I love being part of a, um, a group that is being supervised. So I just find it so incredibly impactful and it just draws out, I think, the best
Mm.
in everybody who is in that process. It's just yeah, it's magical for me.
And a bonus for your viewers, listeners for the podcast. I don't know when this will air, but through, I think, a little past the middle of January, you can still get a 20% off discount using, I guess, the code. And I can't write it, but it's 225SME. So 25 subject matter expert, 4. So it's 25 SME and 4. And if you use that code, you can get 20% off on
Mm,
the book.
fantastic. And that is up until January 2026 for anyone who's listening to this.
Yes, it's through, I think,
Up
like January 19th or something. You'll see it on the website if you go to Rutledge, the publisher's site, not Amazon, but Rutledge.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Sunny, as we start to wrap up, I am wondering what might you like to share with our listeners about yourself or anything that comes to mind based on what we've been sharing or not sharing in our
Mm.
podcast today?
Oh, there's so much. I feel like there are not enough hours in a day that I can read and hear and think and be graced by other people's perceptions, knowledge, insight, and information. Um, um, but I think when we look to see people, there's an artist, I'm trying to remember his name, who said something like, to really see someone is to see them without knowing their name or without remembering their name. So I can see Janine without knowing Janine's name. That the name just becomes, it floats away when you really see someone. It's Robert Irwin, as a matter of fact, is the name of the artist. And that's very true. I think, not that names are not important, but it's the person, the full being that you begin to see, which goes beyond the label. And we label each other in all kinds of ways.
Yes. Yes, we do. And I really thank you for sharing that. I'm going to walk away from our conversation with the intention of whoever I see to really see them, really, really pay attention and see them beyond their name. I think that's a beautiful
name, their description, their race, their gender, their ability, if we can let go of all of those characteristics and biases, and biases can be good too. They're not just negative biases, but just really see people. I think the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I so agree. If we can see the heart of the person that we're connecting with.
And open our hearts to make that connection.
That's it. That is it, Sunny. And I really appreciate you sharing about your journey. It feels like such a privilege to hear that journey that you've been on and coming full circle.
Yes, and continuing every day.
Yeah. It's and thank you for sharing your experiences with our audience. I'm trusting that people will be taking away some wonderful things to experiment with, to play with, to try on.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe all have the courage to just be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sunny. Thank you. It's been, again, a real privilege to have this conversation with you. And so for listeners, we encourage you to find out or connect with Sunny through what will be the links on the webpage so that, again, you can reach out if you would like to do so. We encourage that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks again, Sunny.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us on our website www.empower-world.com and on our social media networks Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. Be empowered.